Canada's got a unique geography, and that unique geography we've talked about a lot today. You are the northern neighbour to the biggest economy in the world. And that's an opportunity and it's a challenge for you. And Canadians continually face an issue around distinctiveness. So how can Canada grow a distinctive industry, a distinctive innovation-driven industry, and address the productivity gap? Can Canada do that by focused on Canada? Well, absolutely no. Although you're physically a large country, you're actually a medium-sized country. Country I come from believes that it can exist without Europe. Can I get a visa to come and work here in Canada, please? Believe me, the Donald is not as big a risk. So you have to think globally. The first challenge is to what extent can Canada create a global receiving environment for the kinds of technologies, the kinds of businesses that you're growing that will allow them to go beyond just Canadian marketplace. And an observation from 10 years in the OECD is that Canadians follow the reputation. They're nice, they're interactive, they're very positive, but they're not very much on the front foot in trying to set what does a regulatory environment look like. And when I say regulatory, I mean standards, I mean best practices, I mean norms, I don't just mean hard regulations. Canadians have done brilliantly well in informing them, but poorly in taking these informed regulatory approaches and nailing them into the design of Canadian policy and the interests of Canadian industry. So I think my first message is be a bit more assertive.
In fact, Canada is full of disruptive innovation. We are, I don't know, Jean-Armand Bombardier, this huge disruption in snowmobile and so on. Guy Laliberté started from a street in Baie-Saint-Paul with guys and reinvent a new circus. So we are good. When I say we, I'm Canadian now. We are good in disruptions. Let me take the case maybe of Cirque du Soleil or Guy Laliberté something. What permits the disruption to build the biggest entertainment company in the world? In fact, not only subsidization from banks and from the government, but also the building of a unique middle ground, which is in fact, if you don't know Montreal, is the north of Montreal, is a Quartier Saint-Michel, which was, it's interesting, it's an old quarry, it's the worst place of Canada, with the lowest income in Canada, at a moment a dangerous place to be, and they decided here to build what they call first La Tohu, which is a center of experimentation in this environment, open to social inclusion. People from the local environment could work there and be revealed to the Cirque du Soleil. And then there is a school of circus which is there. And so by regulation, by the help of the government, by the help of the Cirque du Soleil, they succeeded in this place to build an extraordinary middle ground, connected to the local population, connected to the world. You have a lot of festivals that bring people to the world. And I think this is an example of what Canada can do, is this building of values of social inclusion, of profit-making. Cirque du Soleil is there to profit-making, of respect on the environment. And I think it's a very good example of successes that we can do.
We're good at ideation, we're good at disruption. In fact, we just did a study related to this where we looked at research converted to patenting, both academic patenting and industrial patenting. And what we found is that Canada, in fact, per capita leads the United States and other nations on research publications. Okay, so that means we have great ideas, we have a lot of ideation, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We lag in turning those ideas into patents, academic patents, from academic research into patents. We don't lag quite as much on industrial patents. And so what that means, this sounds very technical, but let's get back to your question. So what that means is we're really good at coming up with great ideas. The Guy Lalibertés of the world, or some of the other, the Fogo Island with Zeta Cobb, others are, I think, examples of what we could do if we took things a little farther than we currently have. Here's the deal. So in Canada, when we go and we think about what we will do on the world stage, we think about solving the problems, and I think this is a very endearing thing of us. We're very nice, right? Isn't that what you said? And so we think, okay, well, regulation.
Oh, you are.
Yes, there you go.
You have to think about it a while
What we think is, well, regulation. Well, that's
stay nice, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Well, regulation. Well, what that is that's how we do social good. That's how we correct the externalities of the world. That's how we do things better. We should make information all free because then the world would do it for good. And I'm very proud of us for this, but that's a little bit naive, ladies and gentlemen, because in fact what some of the rest of the world are doing, they realize a few simple facts, and Ian can grow on this because I'm just new to this. But first of all, we had the question about a patent earlier and whether it mattered. Yeah, a patent sure does matter. And you know why? Because it's the creation of a little monopoly where you now have space to be able to take your invention and your innovation and translate it into money, okay? Now, let's just say you want to do that, because that's a good thing. You probably spent, as I just said, 10 to 15 years trying to get that invention to some place where you could sell it, and now you want to be able to, you probably didn't pay yourself for much of that time, and now you actually want to do something with it and get deployed. Okay, so now I have a patent. Well, if you're not in Canada, say you're in the United States, your government is out negotiating on your behalf to change global regs and standards so that, best available technology standards, they would sometimes call them, so that your technology is the thing that some people might choose. But Canada doesn't do that. Canada says, well, you know, this is for the greater good, and so whoever's technology gets adopted, it will be because it was the best technology, or it will be because it's yielding a greater good. Because we don't realize somehow that, in fact, what technology gets adopted isn't necessarily the one that is going to deliver the greater good. And so what you have is a situation where we go into a negotiation thinking we're going to deliver the greater good, and others who have talked to their entrepreneurs and their CEOs and know what kind of Canadian technologies could deliver greater good, their national greater good, they speak to that and they talk about, well, let's try to go this way or that way. That's how you create space for your entrepreneurs to grow and prosper. And that's what Ian said earlier. So we need to be able to create and not be shy about having a public dialogue between our innovators, our inventors, our CEOs, and our public policymakers so they understand that we have global class entrepreneurs that can do something and that become the Guy Lalibertis of the world. It's a great example. So, for example, I have a couple of companies that are in our portfolio that we're very proud of. They have world-class water technologies, membrane and catalysts, the kinds of technologies, okay? And sometimes even fuel cells technologies from those two spaces. We have world-class researchers, world-class entrepreneurs in this area. And when we're sitting in a room, they'll say, you know what, and I can compete with the best. And they can. Except for if they go into a market which says, well, we're going to, go down this specific technology route to deliver this outcome and specify actually the technology pathway, even though the outcomes could be the same for Canadian technology versus another country's technology. If the technology pathway has been specified down that route, that's the way it's going to go. And by the time you get to saying, well, my outcomes are the same, that regulatory standard is already in place, and you have really a big problem trying to back it up to be able to get market entry on an equal basis for your technology. So one thing, if you're studying law and you're studying intellectual property, and I think you need to think about the fact that the world isn't this idealistic place that we necessarily like it to be. It's actually an opportunistic kind of place, still to deliver good outcomes, but to go down different pathways than we might expect.
How can Canada grow a distinctive industry, a distinctive innovation-driven industry, and address the productivity gap? Can Canada do that by focus on Canada? Well, absolutely no. Although you're physically a large country, you're actually a medium-sized. Create a global receiving environment for the kinds of technologies, the kinds of businesses that you're growing that will allow them to go beyond just Canadian marketplace. And an observation from 10 years in the OECD is that Canadian country I come from believes that it can exist without Europe. Can I get a visa to come and work here in Canada, please? Believe me, the Donald is not as big a risk. So you have to think globally. The first challenge is to what extent can Canada... Canada's got a unique geography, and that unique geography we've talked about a lot today. You are the northern neighbour to the biggest economy in the world. And that's an opportunity and it's a challenge for you. And Canadians continually face an issue around distinctiveness. So